Greetings, War Thunderers. This is Longshot with a stock survival guide for flying the Lavochkin La-9 in arcade. This is a post-war superprop, one of the last piston engine fighters designed by Lavochkin before they switched to jet engines. Unlike the La-5s and La-7s that preceded it, this plane was constructed entirely of metal, and the weight saved by the removal of wooden components allowed for the installation of four 23mm cannon firing through the propeller, in place of the two Shevaks used on earlier variants. The La-9 also had laminar wings, producing significantly less drag and hence allowing it to reach a much higher top speed. In War Thunder, it's a Tier 4 plane, currently ranked at 5.7 in arcade, placing it against various other post-war superprops and occasionally against early jet fighters. So what's the purpose of this stock survival video? After all, anyone can just dive a stock plane at the nearest furball, hoping for a kill or two before they die, and then respawn in another plane. Well, the problem is flying it that way in a stock plane will teach you nothing about how the plane should actually be used when it's fully upgraded. All you're going to learn are bad habits. So in this video I will share my own experiences flying this plane completely stock, using tactics that I feel are appropriate to its flight characteristics and which will help you dominate with the La-9 once you've researched its upgrades. Let's begin by looking at the X-ray. The armour is pretty standard, plates behind the pilot and a bit of hardened glass in front. The internal components show a line of fuel tanks along the wings, and in my limited experience, fires do tend to destroy this plane, so you want to avoid exposing your wings to enemy gunfire. Now before you fly the plane, you have the question of what to research first. Normally I'd go for radiator, as it allows WEP to run longer and cool down faster, but this plane has ammo belts on the top level, so let's look at them. The default is half API, which is fairly useless, and fragmentation incendiaries. The armoured targets belt is mostly API, so that's no good. The air targets is mostly frag shells, which is much better, and the stealth is API only. So it looks to me like there's only one choice, and that's the air targets belt. And we want it as soon as possible, so I'm going to start by researching the ammo belts. And after you've unlocked the belts, prioritise engine upgrades and leave the others till last. Okay, let's look at how it flies, and for this I'm taking it out in a custom battle. As the weapons are fuselage mounted, I'll set my convergence to 800 meters and 45 minutes is the minimum fuel load. On spawning you want to lift up smoothly and to the side, and then let the nose drop gently until you've hit the ideal climbing speed for this plane, which is around 280 kilometers an hour or 174 miles per hour. Try to stay at or above that speed, as the La-9's climbing ability falls away sharply if you slow down in a climb. Like many Russian planes, it loses most of its WEP at around 3,000 meters, but even so it still reaches around 3,700 meters or just over 12,000 feet in 2 WEPs from a standard 2,000 meter arcade spawn, and that's above average for a stock plane. It's still well short, however, of the climbing ability of fully upgraded planes that you'll face in a battle. Alright, let's check its roll rate, and I'll compare it to its predecessor, the La-5F, which has quite a good roll rate. Indeed, you can see it's significantly faster than the La-9. My next test is a turning speed test using elevators only. The La-5's elevators are not particularly strong in arcade, but as you can see it is the better turner of the two. Although the La-9 may of course improve once it's upgraded. If you use elevators alone, like I'm doing here, or just make the plane follow the mouse cursor, which is much the same thing, you will not be winning many turn fights with this plane, but it is holding its speed fairly well. Nothing like a Yak-3 of course, but it's still travelling fast enough that I might see how it goes with combat flaps. And this time I'll compare it with the turn I just performed, with flaps raised. Straight away I can see an improvement in its turn rate, and skipping ahead, it'll still be travelling over 300 kilometers an hour as it completes a full circle. So I'll try it again, this time takeoff flaps versus combat flaps, and once again there's an improvement in the turning rate. Only slight, but it's there. If in a sustained turning battle, I definitely recommend combat flaps, maybe takeoff flaps, provided the dogfight wasn't going too much in the vertical, as then you could find yourself in danger of stalling, as this is after all an underpowered stock plane. But elevator turning isn't this plane's strength in arcade, just as it wasn't with the La-5F, so let's see how they both go in a climbing turn using rudder. Unlike previous videos, I'll hold the camera still for a better comparison. Both planes have strong rudders and are turning much more sharply than they did with elevators. and the La-5F is again the better turner of the two. The 9 is, however, performing very well in this climbing turn. I'm using combat flaps, by the way. Many stock planes will climb a little and then flatten out when they lose their speed, but this is holding over 200 kilometers an hour and powering upwards, and that tells me that it will be phenomenal once it's spaded. It will truly be a super prop. Alright, time for the diving test to check its high-speed handling. And as the planes accelerate, you can see the La-9 begins to roll much faster now than the 5F, which stiffens up far more at high speed. Also, the 5F only reaches 740 kilometers an hour in the dive, whereas the 9 gets closer to 870, and that's the effect of those laminar wings. As high-speed handling is all about roll speed, this looks like a real strength of this plane. But make sure you roll before trying to change direction, otherwise the instructor will want to lift the nose a little, and that'll slow down the plane. I'll see if I can take out this biplane. Yep, no problem. And now up into a vertical climb in a direct and brutal test of its engine power. I started the climb doing just over 700 kilometers an hour, and by the time I passed 200 kilometers an hour, which is my point of reference for this test, it's recovered over 2,000 meters of altitude, which for a stock plane is extremely good. It's a bit clumsy though, recovering from a stall hammerhead, taking a few seconds to bring under control, but this plane does have the makings of an excellent energy fighter and boom and zoomer. But to boom and zoom, you need an altitude advantage, which means you need to climb, which occasionally provides the opportunity to attack bombers. And it's not often a stock plane can reach a climbing Chi 49, but the La-9 can do so, if only just. The problem is the default belts are really not that great at bringing down bombers. Sure, most of my shots went astray there, but with 4 nose-mounted cannon I would have expected more damage than a few oil leaks, and it's the same story with this B-25. I also found that the recoil wanted to buck my aim upwards quite a lot, making it difficult to hold a steady stream of shells on target. Here's a third example with much the same result. It's not often you'll get shots at bombers anyway, as faster planes will usually get there first, but they aren't your main source of kills in a stock La-9. Fighters are. The main method of killing fighters is through diving boom and zoom attacks, such as this one where I make quite a deep dive against multiple targets before I settle on the Hellcat. This dive is going to take me fairly low, down to 1,000 meters, but nothing was happening at higher altitude, and sometimes you need to be aggressive if you're going to get kills. The Hellcat rolls first one way and then the other, and there's a small bobble before I remember to roll my plane, and then I've landed enough shots on target to shoot him down, and I'm up and out of there on a long shallow zoom climb toward friendly territory. Here's another example of what the plane can do in high-speed diving attacks. It's a domination map, so there's plenty of low-altitude targets. And I've taken the time needed to climb and maneuver into position above that group of enemies before I initiate my dive. And that allows me to dive and gain the speed to hit them by surprise, and most importantly get away afterwards with my plane intact. And by the way, I've set myself just a low expectation of only two kills per battle in Tier 4 stock planes. So in this battle I'm going to get both of those in this one attacking pass. And that's because I took that time needed to position my plane first. This snapshot will be enough for the second kill, and now I can use my speed to extend away, climb when it's safe to do so, and prepare for another boom and zoom. The next example will show what will happen if you try and rush it and take a shortcut and position for a diving attack without having gained enough altitude first. I've been spotted by a Typhoon approaching at fairly high speed, and he's picked me out as a target simply because I'm too low. He's going to helicopter straight at me, and as I'm in a stock plane I can't climb away from him. I have no choice but to face him, snap roll past, and then try to run to safety while he turns to follow. And for now that's got me enough separation that I can look to attack other targets while I dive. But because this dive wasn't planned, nothing lines up properly, and I have to extend toward my teammates, the good folk of the WTFG squadron, who kindly invited me to join them for a few battles. But the Tiffy pilot had no intention of letting me get away. Typhoons are fast, especially at low altitude, and he doggedly followed me through a cloud of friendlies, slowly catching up until I'm forced to go evasive, rolling at 0 throttle, hoping for an overshoot, which I get. But he did manage to wreck my rudder, so my plane is now useless, and I ended up having to bail out. and that would not have happened if I'd shown just a little more patience when approaching the battlefield. But sometimes all the patience and positioning in the world won't help if there's enemies at higher altitude intent on taking you out, such as this B-7A2. I've dived to gain speed and switched directions to exploit his poor rolling ability and keep out of his guns, and now we're in a dogfight. The B7 has much stronger elevators, but I'm betting that my rudder turning will prove superior, plus I'm working upwards in a climbing spiral, which will hopefully exhaust his energy. And yes, I'm inside his turn and out climbing him. Hopefully soon I'll be able to hammerhead over and finish him off. But at this point I begin to notice something unusual about the La-9's handling at low speed. It starts to rock up and down wildly depending on my roll angle. But the plane's still under control, I just need to time it so the reticle intercepts his flight path, like that, and the fire will do the rest. As impressive as it is to outturn a B-7A2, it still is a bomber. So let's see how the stock La-9 performs when forced into dogfights against fighters. Starting off with a J2M3 which had dived from about 6,000 metres and is now approaching at high speed for a low yo-yo attack. I turned clumsily to face him. He decides a head-on may not be in his best interest, so he decides to dive and get past me. And for a moment that's put me in control of this engagement. I'm now above and behind him. I'm able to use that height to accelerate and stay in touch. When I start sending bursts of cannon in his direction, he's forced into a rolling evasion, probably using some elevator and rudder as well, to slow his plane and hope to force an overshoot, and that's going to cost him his previous energy advantage. But when I'm too close, he turns up at me sharply, hoping to catch me by surprise, but I'm ready for it. I've slipped past, and now we are in a dogfight. And I kind of expected that he would use rudder and try to outturn me at low speed, but instead he's dropped into a dive in order to accelerate. But I'm easily able to stay inside his turn using the rudder. He tries to compete using elevators and it's just not going to work. And when it's obvious he can't gain an advantage, he decides to give up and dives to his death in the furball below, because that makes more sense. But the interesting thing there was that I was able to gain and keep an altitude advantage, despite the enemy approaching at a much faster speed at the start of the engagement. But in those examples I had a bit of altitude to play with, and that's not the case in this next one, where the enemy holds altitude supremacy. I'm flying with the WTFG crew again and providing cover for one of them while he hunts for ground targets in his duck. This Focke-Wulf 190 is a threat to the duck, so I try to intercept, but I'll be carrying a bit too much speed and I can't quite adjust to his turns, and I miss the shot. I almost got him there. We're isolated out here. My squad mate's in danger, so I'm immediately looping back to continue the attack. And that places me on his tail, which is a very difficult spot from which to land hits on a dodging 190. Pulling up to prepare for another attempt, and A Stroud in his spaded La-9 dives in for the kill. Okay, so he's down, and here's where it gets interesting. This low altitude dogfight has put me in the worst possible situation. I'm low on energy with a fresh wave of incoming enemy Focke-Wulf 190s. I've tried to extend away to safety and regain altitude, but I've been caught by an A1 and an A4. Snap rolled under the A1's attack, but he's a better turner at high speeds, and it looks like he's going to get guns on me, so I need to duck past him again. And also dodge the A4. He's coming in from above. Okay, so far so good. Blowfish below me in his A1 still wants to dogfight, but the A4 has extended away. At lower speeds, my plane at strong rudder comes into play, and I begin to gain the upper hand as we settle into a turning battle. I've lost track of the A4 though the radar tells me he's still fairly close, and I'm easily outturning the A1 now. Okay, the A4 is over 1 kilometre behind me, out of guns range, and not closing in that quickly. And that gives me a chance to shoot down the A1, but I have trouble with the recoil, and neither do I allow enough lead with these low velocity cannon. And now the A4 has caught up and I need to go seriously evasive. Rolling to make myself a hard target and diving to gain speed as I continue my long journey toward the protection of my fighter spawn. A stock plane really does provide a great opportunity to practice your defensive flying skills. In stock form I'd give the La-9 a battle rating of 3.7 or 4.0, certainly no higher than that, so in many ways it's like up-tiering a plane and trying to do well despite your disadvantage. And if you look at it that way, the unpleasant grind turns into an enjoyable challenge where there's satisfaction to be found in every small victory against the odds. And just as with up-tiering, occasionally you'll have a battle where everything falls into place for you. In fact, I'll show pretty much all of this battle, apart from some dull parts which I've edited out, as this shows what the plane is capable of when you do achieve and maintain an energy advantage. And by the way, this skin is only supposed to be unlocked after a huge number of kills, but War Thunder gave it to me after only my 10th flyout in the plane, which was odd, but I'm certainly not going to complain about it. And one thing I haven't spoken about yet is the aesthetic appeal of this plane. I'm not fussed on the earlier Lavochkins, but I really do like the look of the La-9. It has something in common with other super props, such as the Hawker Tempest 2 and the Sea Fury. It looks powerful, well balanced, and deadly. Perhaps it's just me, but this is one of my favourite Soviet designs. Anyway, back to the battle. I've side climbed to 5,300 metres in company with a friendly J2M5, and it's no accident that I'm flying in close proximity to him. There's an enemy G2 at altitude, a plane that I don't think I could defeat in a dogfight, assuming it's flown by a skilled pilot, so I don't want to be isolated against him. When flying a stock plane, it's always a good idea to look for safety in numbers when facing a threat. And the G2's engaging the bomber, so now is a good time to go on the attack. I'm hoping he'll get tunnel vision and won't notice my approach, but he does see me coming and tries for a head-on, and I'm avoiding that with a snap roll. I don't want to turn back immediately. I'd rather get separation first and assess things from there, as I'm pretty sure he'd easily outturn me in a high-speed dogfight, but it looks like he's already in a dogfight with the J2M now. Indeed, the J2M has the drop on him, and as I watch, down he goes. So now we have control of high altitude. That's the first step. The second is to use that advantage to shoot down enemy planes while keeping my own plane intact. And this is one of those battles where hardly any bombers bother to spawn, but that's no concern as fighters are my main target in this plane. But it's also one of those battles which are all too common in arcade these days, where everyone wants to furball on the deck and no one wants to climb. If I was in a fully researched La-9, that wouldn't be a problem. I'd have the engine power to perform long, deep boom and zoom runs at speeds that would make me almost untouchable. But this is a stock plane, so I need to be more careful. I'm starting off with a fake dive, pulling up into a climb in case someone's seen me and wants to follow me up. But in this case, no one took the bait. But you've got to be so cautious at this tier, where every plane really is a UFO in arcade, capable of climbing vertically for far longer than you would think possible. I'm just waiting on the Spitfire on the left, Blackout, for he's a little higher than the other planes. Looks like he's climbing, and that's about as good an opportunity as I could hope for in this kind of battle, so I'm into a diving attack. And as I close in, he really does start to climb, which is going to make him a very easy target. I've also got to watch the J2M approaching on my right, who seems to have some speed and altitude under his wings as well. Okay, Spitfire's down. Now where is that J2M? Pulling a horizontal turn, which will cost him speed, and now he's going to try and follow me in my zoom climb. As I'm already leaving him behind, I don't want him to give up, so I rudder turn the plane, and realizing he's already very low on speed, I'm continuing the turn into a diving attack from directly above. Deploying combat flaps for extra maneuverability. He sees the danger and tries to brake to the left, but it's too late. I have guns on him for long enough to start a fire, which is usually fatal for J2Ms, and on this occasion is as well. So that'll be 2 kills, and I've met my kill target for this battle. Anything from now on is a bonus. And what's more, that was a stall fighting kill, which is very rare in a stock plane, and hence all the more satisfying when you pull one off. And by the time I'd circled around, there was a gap in the stream of incoming enemy fighters and a big mess of them in the centre of the battlefield. And without exception, they are all at low altitude, and this obviously presents a bit of a problem. I could dive down there and join them, but I wouldn't escape. So instead I'm just going to press a bit lower, dropping my altitude by 1,000 metres or so, and seeing if I can find any targets just a little higher than the crowd of grass cutters. And yes, there's a Focke-Wulf 190 and a P-38 trailing after a friendly B-25. But my cannon let me down here. I should have gotten a kill there. I really hope the air targets belt improved these cannon. I sometimes feel that a single Shavak does more damage than these 423mm with the default belt, but very soon I will have other things to worry about. That attack took me down 1,000 metres below fighter spawn altitude, and I'm only 2 kilometres from the fighter spawn point. I'd gotten myself a bit turned around and didn't realise the danger I was in until that Focke-Wulf 190 spawned far closer than I expected and immediately started to run me down. And I'm out of WEP, there's no chance I'm going to get away from him, so I have to dogfight. But first I need to avoid his gunfire and get in close. Snap rolling, and again, and now into a flat rudder turn to avoid exposing my wings, exploiting the plane's habit of rocking up and down with changes of roll angle to make myself a hard target, and now I'm past him. Let's see if he wants to turn fight. Yes, he does. But I have another problem. Blackout Spitfire is closing in. He has seen the chance of revenge for shooting him down earlier on. But he must have climbed from very low altitude, as he doesn't even have enough energy to meet me head on, making that an easy kill. And I'm not alone here. Big D, who threw the J2M5 earlier in the battle, has joined me in a J2M4, so there's a chance we can put up a fight here. I've lost track of the 190, and right now there's a helicopter in 109 to deal with. I only just squeezed past his guns. And now both the 109 and 190 are turn fighting me, and I'm still turning with rudder and up elevator, with combat flaps deployed and hitting WEP to maintain my speed and climb. The 109 is using elevators, not rudder. I'm about to get guns on the 190 who's doing the same, and he's lost his speed, seems to be out of ideas trying to climb out, and that's not going to work for him. I hit him with a long enough burst to score my 4th kill. That leaves the 109, who is still trying to turn fight me horizontally, using elevators. That's just not going to work. Big D gives him a bit of a fright, and he breaks off and dives away. And it's now that I notice my continual spiral climb has carried me almost up to bomber spawn altitude. I'm finally far enough away from the fighter spawn to be out of danger, and I can start to breathe again. But I am not done yet in this battle. It's winding down, but I still have a chance for a 5th kill. I position myself above the stream of incoming fighters, and I start a dive at the La-9, which was a bit higher than the others. But a Seafire noticed me and pulled into a helicopter attack, so I'm breaking off my dive and I start a steep spiral climb. I don't dare to fly straight in the climb, as that's an invitation to be shot down at long range. He's falling back, so I hammerhead over and go on to the attack. I zoom in. Yes, he's stalled. He's trying desperately to recover his speed, but it's all too late, and I finish the battle with an extremely satisfying rope-a-dope. And that not only gives me an ace in the day, it puts me on top of the leaderboard as well, something I never thought possible in this stock level plane when I first started to fly it. Like anything else, it just required a lot of practice, patience, good tactics, and luck. And furthermore, that battle has unlocked my first upgrade, the ammunition belts, so it's all onwards and upwards from here. Let's take a quick look at my record to this point. Where are we? Okay. 12 battles, 7 deaths, and 27 kills, so I've exceeded my target of 2 kills per game. I've been flying with no premium, hardly any boosters, and the win rate's a lousy 25%, but in a stock plane that's completely out of my control. If I'd had premium and a few more wins, I'd obviously have unlocked the belts a lot sooner, but even so, 12 battles isn't that much really. If you don't focus on the grind, instead just fly one battle at a time and try to score kills against the odds, while keeping your plane alive even in the most desperate situations, it's amazing how much enjoyment can be gained from flying a stock plane, and that's really the way you have to approach it. Don't worry about that long list of upgrades and how much RP they require. Just concentrate on the flying, which is why we play the game after all. The upgrades will take care of themselves. In my next arcade video, I'll be stepping back to Tier 2, looking at the P-39 Airacobras. But it's possible I might make a vid on realistic or even simulator battles before then. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's all I have for this video. As always, I look forward to reading your comments, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It only takes a click of the mouse. Until my next vid, whatever it might be, this is Longshot signing off. I'll be seeing you in the skies.